The biggest encounter of the ninth round of Tata Steel Masters was 16-year-old Gukesh taking on world champion Magnus Carlsen. This was going to be the first classical encounter between Gukesh and Magnus. So everyone was very excited. And this is the first picture of their handshake taken by Lennart Otis. Very nice sort of setting. Magnus came a bit late to the game, like 5 seconds or so, and then they began, and it was an intense game, and I'm going to analyze that for you, ask you a few questions, and then we are going to have a look at the standings also of the tournament, and what lies for us in the next rounds. So let's begin. Magnus had the white pieces, Gukesh was black, and it started off with d4, knight f6, c4, e6, knight f3, d5, knight c3, and Gukesh goes for his favorite opening, which is the Ragozin defense. And it's quite dangerous because you're not just facing Magnus in the opening, you're also facing his team of seconds, you're also facing his preparation that he has done for major events. And when you're going to play the same opening that you have played for many games, you stand a chance of just hitting into some opening prep and not recovering, because once Magnus gets an advantage with white pieces, it's not easy. But Gukesh has this thing about him that he believes in himself, that he believes in his opening prep, and he wants to stand by it. So he goes for the Ragozin, CD by Magnus, ED, bishop f4. Now this is just to tell you how uh, popular the other move is here. In this position, there are 7,622 games, out of which 6,078 games have continued with bishop g5, and only 300 games with bishop f4. Now, castles is possible, but Gukesh goes knight e4. And the interesting part about this is that Gukesh has played this before against Nodirbek Abdusattorov in the AIM Chess Rapid online tournament, where he had gone knight c6. Now, the basic idea of this opening, just so that you know, is that you are waiting here for white to make a move, and the moment white plays the most natural move e3, you go and hit with g5, and this is how this continues. And generally white tries to play knight d2 here, and then Gukesh had gone g5 in his game with Nodirbek, and it was a crazy game, it was very complicated. But here Gukesh decided to play knight to d7, and this is played only in 5 games. But the famous game here is Kasparov versus Nepomniachtchi. They played this opening at the tournament in Zagreb, where Kasparov had played at the Grand Chess Tour Blitz. Knight d2 played. Once again, if you go e3, we know what black has to do, g5. And this is how Kasparov versus Nepomniachtchi versus Kasparov went. Sorry, Kasparov is white. Kasparov, Nepomniachtchi, h5, queen b3, takes, and now c6. Very important, because if you play h4, then there is bishop e5, and if you play f6, then there is queen takes d5 attacking the e4 knight. So first you play c6 defending d5, knight d2, which was a mistake. Here it was important to play h4, but already then black is better with knight g3. But he played knight d2, and after takes h4, queen f6 with a double attack, Nepo went on to win a very short 18 move game against Garry Kasparov. So knight d2 was played here by Magnus. He knows all these stuffs. Magnus is well aware of these ideas. Takes on c3 by Gukesh, b takes, bishop a3, and Gukesh was very well prepared. He was moving quickly, rook b1, knight b6. And here is where we deviate from the only game that has reached this position, and it's quite a game between quite two strong players, Jeffrey Jeong and Schweritz. Here, Jeffrey had gone queen c2, stopping bishop f5. And that game had continued with bishop d7, e3, queen e7, and so on. It had gone and later on ended in a draw. But what Magnus did is he played e3. This allowed Gukesh to hit the rook with bishop f5, rook b3, and now brought his bishop back to d6. Bishop g3, castles, knight to f3 played, And now there were many ways to play. In fact, black has already got the better side of equality. Something like knight c4 would have been nice. The main point is that you can never take this pawn, because then my knight simply jumps back and traps your rook. It's like trapping shut the rook. But uh, there was also possible to play rook b8 here. So there were some possibilities, but he went c5, which is also fine. Takes, bishop takes, and now bishop d3. Gukesh put his bishop on e4, so that if you take, he'll take back with the pawn. Castles, queen e7, logical chess, queen b1, rook c8, putting the rook on the half open file, rook d1, putting the other rook here, bishop h4, and now he blocks this with f6. So this is some kind of a little Magnus-like maneuver. He wanted to provoke f6, and he thought it would be useful for softening up the e6 square and the diagonal and the 7th rank in future, which is basically great understanding because the engines are not in support of the move. But as the game progresses, you will see that this became useful. He took here, and now it was he took with the rook, which is good, because if you take with the queen, then after knight c4 the knight can move. Base b7 pressure has been reduced. So rook takes, and here I was expecting Gukesh to go rook d7, because with this he protects b7 and prepares knight c4. But he went queen e4, knight d2, queen f5 was played. I think an interesting idea here was queen g6. The point is, after h4 you have knight a4, and again it's the same trick. If you take on b7, I shut you down with bishop b6, and now c3 is hanging and black is better. But in queen f5 line after h4, if you now went knight a4, then there's a very important move that white has. Try to find what should white do here. Just a small little move, which is the reason why queen g6 would have been better instead of queen f5. Yes, the move is c4. And the point is, if you take here, then I go rook d8, and the queen is hanging. And that is the key reason why queen f5 is not as accurate as queen g6. But okay, he went rook e8, and I like this next maneuver, rook b5, queen g6. So Gukesh is telling Magnus, I am taking advantage of your h4 pawn, which looked slightly shady. Why you are doing that? Because now I want to take on e3, fe3, and take on g3. That's my plan. So bishop f4 played by Magnus, bishop f8, rook a5, a6 by Gukesh. And the point is, if you take the knight, I'm taking your rook. So you can't take it. And this is where Magnus thought for, I think, around 20-25 minutes. And he came up with this move, e4. Because this is really the critical moment. And I'm amazed that Gukesh actually made his next move within like 30 seconds or so. He played his knight to c4, which is fantastic. And I think one of the best moves in the position. I was thinking what happens after de4. So try to figure out white to play. What would you do here? Yes, this is a blunder. Rook g3. Now the next move, you can pick up the knight. You are pieced down. Okay. Another move was queen g4 here. Because with this move, you are attacking the bishop on f4. And if he tries to save it now with this, then you can play d4. There's no rook g3 business. So this would work, but he would take on b6, take on e4, and take on f4, and the position is roundabout even. Okay, knight c4 was played here by Gukesh. He took rook a d5, knight takes, and now there is rook d2 or bishop d2. If you play rook d2, then after queen, sorry, not rook e4, but queen e4, and the position is equal because the bishop is hanging on f4. You have no time to take on b7. So bishop d2 was taken, queen e4, and now Magnus had a choice between taking on b7 or not. And this is where some very interesting lines exist. So let's look at them. In the game, he played rook 5 d4, but if he had taken this pawn, now what can Gukesh do? So if, let's say, Gukesh takes here a blunder, what should white play? White to move. There's a nice bit of calculation. The move here is rook 3 d4. trapping the queen actually. The queen has nowhere to go. It's gone. If you play rook e4, then a c8 is hanging, so you can't do that. And if you play rook b8, here's a nice little variation. I take, you take here, and now white to play. What do you do? Very careful, yeah, because if you take on e8, then d5 hangs, but you play queen b3, and now the queen is hanging, and if you take here, g8 check, and this is a very nice variation. Instead of queen h4, the right move here for black is rook b8. And I think in the post game analysis, Gukesh and Magnus were analyzing queen a6, check, here check, take on f2, and now this next move was, I guess, missed by Magnus, queen d3, which looks like a very, very dangerous move because you are attacking the rook here and also attacking the pawn here. However, the problem is that this queen at 7 is not a fatal move. And so what you can do is you can go rook e2 here. Very nice move. It's not the only move to draw. I mean, there are other moves also in this position, but rook e2 is just very strong. Queen at 7, king f7, and after check, I go back and it's a draw. So rook 5 d4 was played. Queen e6. Queen takes b7, but this time now after queen takes a2, h5, queen f7, queen goes back to f3, h6, rook d7, queen e6. I like how Gukesh just keeps everything under control. Queen g3, queen f5. If you take here, the key point here is that you can go check and queen h5 with a winning position. So you don't have the time. He goes queen g6. You take here, and now rook 8. And Gukesh played so accurately this entire time. Magnus tried to put pressure on him, but he did not really let him get that advantage. a5, rook d5, a4. And here's a small thing that I wanted Gukesh to do. If he would have done it, I would have been super impressed, which was to go rook e7 here and keep fighting on, because then what happens is after take, black is clearly better because his bishop is coming here. So maybe the move is rook f7, then you take a2, threatening to queen, rook d1, rook a4, rook a1, rook here. And I think already black has to be white has to be very careful. Maybe the best way is to just sack here and play this position. And this is a draw theoretical, but okay, Gukesh can maybe try here. But instead he played a2 and this allowed Magnus to take, and then rook f7 and rook g7, and now it's just check, 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 check on all these, on these two squares. You know, they will draw. So that's the reason why the players agreed to a draw here, and that made Gukesh get his first ever classical point against Magnus, half a point for him, and that was brilliant. What was even very nice is that the moment the game ended, by the way, here's Gukesh before the game getting ready, or just at the start of the game, very focused. Gukesh invited Magnus after the game for an analysis session outside the playing venue, and Magnus agreed, which was very nice. They analyzed for close to 50 minutes, which was very nice. You know, in these analysis session, maybe Magnus wanted to understand a bit more about Gukesh as a player. Gukesh wanted to learn some tricks from Magnus, you know, how the world champion thinks. So I guess it was a mutually beneficial session. And what ended very nicely was both of them had great smiles and they shook hands here. You know, Gukesh revealed in the post game interview that he had only one thing in mind. Even if he lost, he wanted to invite Magnus for for a post game analysis session, which he managed to do, and also managed to get a draw. So that's very cool. By the way, the results of the day were five draws actually, and Nodirbek was very close to losing to Vincent. On the left, you can see all the results. Arjun lost to Rapport, and Ding Liren lost to Anish Giri. And Right now, the standings are 6.5 for Nodirbek. He still keeps his sole lead. And he has to play against Anish Giri and Wesley So yet. So that's going to be very exciting. Pragnananda is on 5 points, Gukesh on 3, and Arjun also on 3. So both of them have a lot of catching up to do. Today is Gukesh versus Pragnananda, so a very important round, and Arjun takes on Fabiano Caruana. Magnus Carlsen is up against Parham Maksudlu, while Nodirbek Abdusattarov takes on Ding Lijen. That's the pairing from here. For now, this is Sagar Shah signing off. Bye bye. I'm traveling to Pune today and I will be commentating from there along with Amruta and maybe a special guest joining us. Take care.